Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for today's episode, it's going to be very helpful if you are a Dynamics user based in Canada or you are a partner helping Canadian customers to implement Dynamics. We're going to talk about a very specific topic, Capital Cost Allowance, the CCA, with specific tax rules regarding a certain asset acquisition. So it sounds like complex, but I will give you a real-life example with the calculation and provide 3 different design options. So for this episode, we're going to first focus on that first design option through an automatic PO asset acquisition. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into it. If you need to have more understanding about the CCA, you can find a lot of articles online. And basically, this is just a tax deduction. You will have a ceiling, and then only that ceiling amount is taxable. And for the remainder, you may have different taxation rules, but feel free to check it out. And in today's episode, we will just focus on the vehicle type of asset acquisition with 5% GST rate. Right? So let me bring up this Excel sheet I created. Okay, so in this example, let's say I am a business owner and I have purchased a vehicle from my vendor and the net cost is 100,000 Canadian dollars. And then my tax GST rate is 5%. So that gives us 5,000 in total as tax amount, right? So that gives 105,000 as total payable that I owe that vendor, right? So straightforward. So with this CCA rule, what's going to change? Basically, you have a ceiling. So in this scenario only, that's 37,000. You may have different ceiling depending on the type of asset or other taxation rules. But here we see the ceiling is 37,000. And on this part, you're going to have 5% of tax applied. So that gives us 1,850 Canadian dollars. And then for the remainder, so you can see the calculation. I basically use this total net invoice amount 100K minus my ceiling and then times my GST rate 5%. That gives the total excess cost plus GST to 66,150, right? And then once that vehicle is acquired, the acquisition price of that vehicle should be 103,150, which is the total of the ceiling plus excess cost and GST, right here. And then my total GST is going to be 1,850, matching this tax applied for my 37K. That gives also the total payment of 105, which matches the total payable amount on my invoice, right? So that's why you see the checking here is 0. So now this is from functional side, how we calculate and get to this detailed fixed asset acquisition price and tax amount. And from technical perspective, if you just use the PO automatic acquisition approach for a regular purchase without CCA, then you're going to have this 5,000 showing up as your total tax amount, and then your fixed asset is going to carry this 105K as the total principal amount, right? The acquisition price. But with the CCA in place, what we want is basically have the GST only applied to a portion of the ceiling amount and being posted to that specific GST GL account. And this also affects your fixed asset acquisition price, right? Instead of having 105K, now you have 103K. And how we're going to design this out. So the first option, we're going to continue to use PO to trigger that fixed asset acquisition through that automatic feature. But within that PO, we're going to have 2 separate lines with 2 different items. One item called that ceiling with 37K with the tax calculated. However, for the second PO line, I will just enter straight this total amount without any tax rate. So that's going to be tax code exempt. And you're going to see that my fixed asset total price is going to show up with this 103,150 as total acquisition price. So now let's build the scenario within Dynamics and see how does CCA looks like. Okay, so first I'm going to create a PO directly. Oh, by the way, the first step should be create a fixed asset card before you create this purchase order. So normally we let the purchase order trigger the fixed asset card creation, but in this scenario, we want to tie those two lines into an existing asset. So what we need to do here, I'm going to create a separate tab and we're going to create a fixed asset manually first. Okay, so let's go to fixed asset module. And then I will go to fixed assets, create a new one. So for this scenario, it's going to be a vehicle. Here, fixed asset group, I will choose vehicle. All right, and then you have this number. You can give a name. We can just do CCA demo. All right, and that's everything you need to enter. So for some customers, you may need to get to books and assign some financial dimensions if that's required. And in this example, we have multiple books, but I'll just pick this standard SLSL, that's the standard service one. And then let's see if I put the business unit, department, I'll just assign some random value here, project, service line. All right, all good now. So my fixed asset has been created, vehicle number 11. Now I'm ready to create my purchase order. So I just came back to my purchase order screen. Let's create a new PO. Okay, so first I need to pick my vendor account, in this case, from who I have purchased that vehicle. And for the demo purposes, I'll just pick this cable sales and SE service, just for example. All right, from here, I will assign a warehouse and site. So normally if I pick a warehouse, it's going to fill in that site automatically. Accounting date, currency, all good. I can go ahead and get to the lines. So it's slightly different because from a regular PO triggering fixed asset creation, you don't need to manually create a fixed asset first. But in our case, we want to create two lines within the PO and tied to the same existing asset. And from item perspective, I have also created two different items to manage the tax requirement, right? Because the first line, that's going to be our CCA ceiling, so that's 37K. I will pick this fixed asset vehicle CCA limit item I created. Okay, now we will continue. Scroll to the right and we have to assign a unit price. So I will just bring up my Excel sheet where you can see here my ceiling CCA has this 37K. I will come back here and put my 37K as unit price, which is total price as well. And one thing to remember is at the line details, you have to get to this fixed assets tab and then pick that existing fixed asset number. So we have already created that card. You no longer need to check this as a new asset, right? So I will just type vehicle and ours is this number 11 CCA demo. And then the book is SLSL, the standard, but of course you can change to the tax posting layer if needed. And the transaction type is acquisition. So with that, the second thing you need to verify is your tax calculation. So for the first line, 37K, we want to ensure there is 1,850 tax amount calculated with 5% GST. So that means in the setup section, you want to check this item sales tax group, and sales tax group has been assigned correctly from both the item level and the vendor level, right? So now the system should apply 5% GST on the specific line. You can also check that, and just to confirm from here in the purchase order, you see the totals. Okay, so here the total gives you the total amount 37K together with sales tax 1850. That matches exactly what we expected. All good here. Now let's create a second line, right? We have the remainder. So same thing, add a second PO line. For the item, I have another specific one called FA Vehicle Excess Cost. And for this one, actually, for this specific item, I will need to make sure there's no tax applied because the amount I'm going to assign here already includes the 5% GST. So I will just go back to my spreadsheet and grab this total, 66,000. And this already has GST. That means in their setup here, I want to make sure my item sales tax group is set to exempt. So that's 0%. And my vendor sales tax group does not change, right? And then same thing, you're going to apply this line to the fixed asset as well. So I will pick the same asset number, VE, and then pick number 11 for CCA with the book assigned. Now we can check the total again, but for the second line, you should no longer see any tax, any additional tax. So you see the subtotal, we have 103,150, and then total tax only 1850. That gives a total invoice amount of 105. We can have a quick check to the spreadsheet. So 103,150, this is our fixed asset principal amount. GST 1850, this is correct. And my total payable is 105. So that gives the total amount 105. All good here. Now we can continue and confirm this purchase order. So this is basically how we work around the CCA ceiling, which requires to apply a tax calculation only on a portion of that asset, right? So basically we have split it into two lines with two different items where you can have the flexibility to assign the tax code to work around this requirement. And from here, all other steps are following the standard regular process, right? So we're going to confirm it, receive it, and then that invoice of this purchase order is going to trigger the asset acquisition. So we're going to see that in a moment. Okay, so now PO has been confirmed. We will continue with product receipt. So normally, product receipt is going to trigger the fixed asset card creation. But in our case, we have manually created that card. So this step doesn't really change anything for now, right? I'll give the product receipt number and confirm it. All right, and the one final step is going to generate my PO invoice. So that's also a regular standard process. Under generate invoice, we're going to assign invoice number. Okay, I will use the same product receipt number. And here you have the two lines, and I just need to manually update my match status, but you might not need to do the step if it's not required, right? Now the status is passed, I can post my invoice. All right, there we go. So we have invoiced the purchase order. Now is the moment of truth. I'm going to switch to the other tab on the asset I created, right? So this is the one. I'll scroll up. You can see currently we're on this SLSL book. I will refresh this, and now the status becomes open, right? That's because the acquisition has happened through a purchase order, and I have my total acquisition price of 103,150, which matches our spreadsheet. Total principal amount 103,150. And now if we go back to my purchase orders, I want to see my invoice if I have the taxable amount calculated correctly with the total payable. Then here you can see, okay, my tax is 1850, matches 1850, and then my total invoice amount is 105,000. So now you basically see the end-to-end design, how to manage this CCA tax specification for vehicle purchases. Please comment below and let me know if you want to see other options through fixed asset acquisition adjustment journal or GL rate class or other design ideas. Again, thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe to help me move forward. See you in the next episode.